Hello and welcome back to Standard Sports Ashes coverage. We're here to preview the second test, which gets underway in the early hours of Thursday morning. I'm joined again by Will McPherson in Australia, and not just in Australia, but on the ground in Adelaide. You weren't at the first test, Will, obviously because of those border restrictions, but how are things in Adelaide?
Yeah, good. Was able to go to an England net session yesterday. We'll do the same today and be at the game tomorrow, which is all quite exciting.
So the big thing, I suppose, from an England point of view is that Jimmy Anderson it looks like, going to come straight back into the team. He was left out of the squad completely for the first test with a view to playing in this second game. Lots to talk about how the pink ball might suit him. What do you make of the fact that England have got a bowler of that quality to come in, because they do need him to come out firing?
They do. Anderson's obviously they've got more wickets than any seamer in Test history, more than 600. Five of those came in Adelaide 4 years ago when he got his first 5-wicket haul on Australian soil. I think England think that he is a point of difference with his ability to swing and seam a ball on what's probably going to be a pretty flat pitch. So the bowlers are going to the pink ball doesn't necessarily mean the bowlers just automatically have a great time of it. They're going to need to bowl well. They identified this game as a perfect one for Anderson. You could say that was overthinking things because they lost in Brisbane. I think really at his age, Anderson's 39. We saw him in the last Ashes series ruled out after 4 overs in 2019. England had to be really careful. He didn't feel quite ready, whether he was injured or rested or not risked. It's all semantic, really. He wasn't quite ready to play. And he'll be a very important player for England this week. I don't know who exactly will join him in the attack, but they have lots of options, and I suspect they'll end up with a 5-man seam attack, but we don't know that yet.
So talk about why the pink ball and the day-nighter might suit Jimmy Anderson, but there's kind of been a bit of a narrative that it's also going to suit England as a team. And you wrote a piece earlier this week, I think it was, that kind of had a look at why that might not be the case. Essentially, Australia have played lots of day-night games and been very good at them. England haven't played many at all and have not been brilliant at them.
Yeah, Adelaide is kind of the unofficial home of day-night cricket. This is the 6th match here. There's only been 16 men's day-night tests before now, and Australia have played in 8 of them, and they've won the lot, whereas England have only played 4. They won the first one, which was in England, and proved a bit too cold to ever do again. And they've lost the following 3, and generally by quite a big margin. They've got a poor record. They've also got players who are quite experienced but have never played in one. So Rory Burns, Joss Buttler, Mark Wood are all experienced enough. They're all in their 30s for a start. They've all played more than 20 tests, but none of them are day-nighters. So there's just I think the narrative that because of Anderson and maybe Stuart Broad, Chris Wokes, those kind of bowlers being great, exponents of lateral movement, there's this sense that people think that day-night tests are good for England, and I think that's a bit simplistic. I mean, obviously, there's a second one at the end of this series in Hobart. England need the series to be live for that to be any kind of advantage to them. But yeah, I don't think it's quite as cut and dry as day-night is. Good for England, bad for Australia.
To finish, then, England obviously 1-0 down in series. We don't think there are draws at any stage, so the likelihood is that England are going to have to win 3 of these last 4 matches. Then you wouldn't think they're going to win 3 on the bounce if they get beat here. So why can they turn it around from what really, besides one encouraging day, was a pretty poor performance in the first test?
Yeah, the history is very much against England, and an England side have only lost in Brisbane and won the Ashes in Australia once in the last 100 years, since 1912. That was 67 years ago when the captain was Len Hutton. This is kind of ancient cricket history, really, and that is very problematic for England. I think they can turn it round. They have to put in an exemplary performance this week from the first ball, which is pretty much exactly what they got wrong last week. The first ball was the biggest problem of the whole game, and it set the tone. They've got to win in Adelaide. You can't, even if they draw here. I see it as very difficult to win the series from there. Why can they? I think they've, that it might be that we reflect that the Anderson decision was a masterstroke, possibly with Stuart Broad as well, even though they lost in Brisbane. It's possible they come back firing. The batters have to improve. You can't get bowled out for 147 in Australia and win any games. It just doesn't happen. Second innings was clearly better thanks to Joe Root and Darwin Milan's performance. What they've got to hope is that everyone will be better for having a game in their legs. But the warm up was severely disrupted, so they barely played any cricket in the build up. So they arrived not ready at all. They've got to hope that the players are battle hardened. Those who haven't played in Australia have got better understanding of what the challenges are. Those who have step up and use their experience. They have a chance, but it all hinges on this week.
Well, we'll have all the usual analysis and coverage from Will on the ground over on Standard Sport throughout the test, and we'll catch up after the first day's play.